3 weeks before my sister's wedding, Lydia pushed my invitation across the table. "You're not classy enough to be there. Half the guests will think you came to fix the microphones." Mom didn't defend me, just let her enjoy her big day. Hallie. So I stayed home alone. That night, halfway through a glass of Pinot Noir, my phone exploded with alerts. Every news channel was replaying Julian on stage, accusing Lydia of forging his signature, then slapping her in front of 400 guests. I felt sick. Nothing she had done justified that. But when the camera caught his lawyer clutching a file I recognized, I understood why Lydia had banned me, and the forged signature was only the beginning. Before I reveal what was inside that file, hit like and tell me where you're listening from. And if your family has ever dismissed your expertise until they suddenly needed it. Share what happened. Your stories remind me I'm not the only one pushed aside. My name is Hallie Keene. I was 39, lived in Atlanta, and had spent most of my life being useful to people who did not consider usefulness impressive. My sister Lydia was 7 years younger and built her career in front of cameras. She reviewed luxury hotels, attended brand launches, and posted carefully edited pieces of her life to hundreds of thousands of followers. She was good at it. Lydia understood lighting, timing, and how to make strangers believe they had been invited into something exclusive. Mom understood that kind of success. Margot had spent years organizing museum fundraisers, where status was measured by table placement, designer labels, and whose name appeared on the donor wall. To her, Lydia's work looked elegant, mine looked like labor. Whenever Mom explained what I did, she said, "Hallie handles the technical side of events." That usually made people picture me carrying speakers. They never pictured the company I owned, the employees whose salaries depended on me, or the contracts I reviewed before a broadcast could legally begin. Still, my family called whenever they needed help. I had produced 2 of Mom's charity galas at cost. I had loaned Lydia cameras, screens, and technicians for her brand events. When a live stream failed 10 minutes before one of her launches, I sent a crew across Atlanta and saved the campaign. Lydia thanked me privately. Publicly, she called it a vendor issue. Dad was less openly dismissive. Martin simply avoided taking sides. When Lydia insulted me, he said she was under pressure. When Mom demanded another favor, he said keeping peace was easier than arguing. Peace, in our family, usually meant I stopped objecting. By the time Lydia became engaged to Julian Prescott, she had convinced herself that marrying into a wealthy hotel family required editing the rest of us. Mom changed her wardrobe, Dad practiced pronouncing investors' names, and I became the sister who looked too much like the staff. What none of them understood was that Lydia's $500,000 wedding depended on a production contract that had landed on my desk, and hidden inside it was a promise her future husband had never made. I started in event production at 19, wearing a borrowed black polo and carrying more cable than I weighed. My first job was at a hotel ballroom. I taped wires to carpet, checked microphones, replaced dead batteries, and learned how quickly a room full of important people could panic when a screen went dark. At first, I only knew how to fix equipment. Then I learned that the most dangerous failures happened before anyone touched a camera. A speaker could refuse permission to be recorded. A sponsor could use a logo it did not own. A charity could announce money its board had never approved. A live stream could violate a contract in front of thousands of viewers before anyone had time to stop it. So I studied broadcast engineering, production insurance, media licensing, brand permissions, digital signatures, crisis management. By 31, I had enough clients and enough nerve to start Frameline Live. The first year, I ran the company from a rented warehouse with 3 employees, 2 used cameras, and a van that stalled whenever it rained. 8 years later, we had 48 full-time employees, 6 production trucks, 2 equipment facilities, and more work than I could have imagined when I was wrapping cables after midnight. We produced investor conferences, product launches, charity galas, award shows, and live corporate events. Our annual revenue was strong, but so were the costs. Payroll, insurance, equipment loans, travel, freelance crews, backup systems no guest ever noticed unless they failed. I still worked on site because success had not made live events less fragile. One bad authorization could cost more than one broken camera. My family never understood that distinction. Lydia saw a black polo and a tool case. She never saw the contracts that decided whether 12 cameras were legally allowed to turn on. Mateo Ruiz, my chief operating officer, did. He had worked beside me for more than a decade and knew exactly when a family favor became a business risk. The morning Lydia's final production packet arrived, Mateo placed it on my desk. "Something in the approvals is wrong," he said. The signature looked like Julian's. The document said it had been authorized 2 weeks earlier, but the file had been created 3 days ago, and attached to it was a $2 million promise from a foundation that had never signed anything at all. The wedding was scheduled for the Glass House at Briar Park, a conservatory and ballroom built for the kind of photographs Lydia loved. There would be 428 guests, including Prescott Meridian investors, board members, luxury brands, influencers, and enough local press to make the reception feel like a corporate launch. The budget had climbed to $610,000. Mom and Dad committed $125,000. Julian capped his contribution at $210,000. Lydia added $42,000 of her own money, and legitimate vendor credits covered another $35,000. That still left a gap of nearly $200,000. Julian wanted to cut the guest list, remove the LED installation, and keep the reception private. Lydia refused. She had spent months calling it the social event of the year. Shrinking it now would mean admitting the image was larger than the money behind it. When I asked her about the authorization packet, she did not answer the questions. Instead, she invited me to her bridal luncheon. I should have known it was not peace. After dessert, Lydia slid my RSVP card across the table. "Julian's board, investors, and family will all be there," she said. "You're not classy enough for that room." 2 bridesmaids stared at their plates. Mom said nothing. Lydia continued. "You dress like the crew. You talk about budgets. Half the guests will assume you came to fix a microphone." I looked at her. "Is this about my shoes? Or the document you want me to approve?" Her face changed for half a second. Then Mom stepped in. "Just let her enjoy her big day. Hallie, for once. Stop turning everything into a contract problem." Dad was not there, but later he called and said it was only 1 day. I did not beg for the invitation back. "I'll stay away," I told Lydia, "but my absence won't make that signature real." That afternoon, Frameline sent formal notice that we could not proceed without valid authorization. We returned the unused portion of the deposit, deducted only the survey and technical planning already completed, and released the production dates. Lydia hired a smaller company called Bright Arc Events. To my family, that proved I had been difficult. To me, it proved Lydia would rather replace an entire production company than ask her future husband for one written approval. And buried beneath the fake signature was a promise of $2 million from a foundation that had never heard Lydia's name. Lydia's deal was with a lifestyle platform called Vow and Velvet Media. In exchange for exclusive access to the ceremony and reception, they offered $138,000 in cash, $71,000 in vendor credits, and another $46,000 in production and promotional support. The total value was enough to close almost the entire gap in her wedding budget. But Vow and Velvet wanted more than pretty footage. They wanted sponsor placements, interviews with Lydia and Julian, permission to use the Prescott Meridian logo, and a major philanthropic announcement during the reception. According to the contract, Julian and Lydia would publicly commit $2 million from the Prescott Family Foundation to a new arts program Lydia had created, the Lydia Prescott Creative Futures Initiative. She was not yet married. Julian had never approved the name. The foundation had never reviewed the program. And the bank account receiving the advance was controlled only by Lydia. The authorization page carried Julian's signature. That was the problem. There was no digital certificate, no audit trail, and no company approval number. The file claimed it had been signed 2 weeks earlier, but its metadata showed it had been created 3 days before Mateo placed it on my desk. The logo had been copied from a public media kit. The foundation's legal name was written incorrectly, and the supposed board resolution did not exist. I met Lydia privately and gave her a simple way forward. Have Julian's counsel confirm the media rights, the logo permission, and the donation in writing. Then Frameline can proceed. She folded her arms. This is a wedding. Hallie. Not a federal investigation. Then getting the groom's approval should be easy. Her expression told me it was not. After Frameline withdrew, I sent a compliance notice to Priya Desai, General Counsel for Prescott Meridian. I did not accuse Lydia of a crime. I did not ask anyone to cancel the wedding. I attached the documents, explained what we could not verify, and stated why my company had stepped away. Priya began checking everything. Lydia delayed her with cropped messages, a new memo, and claims that Julian had approved the deal verbally. She also told Julian I was retaliating because I had been removed from the guest list. He believed her enough to let Priya handle it quietly. 2 days before the wedding, Vow and Velvet transferred the cash advance into Lydia's initiative account. The bank flagged the transaction because it was tied to a multi-million-dollar charitable promise. That forced direct verification. At 4:42 on the wedding day, Priya received the final audit. The signature had been pasted into the file from Lydia's tablet. The ceremony had already begun. And Lydia still had 12 cameras, 400 guests, and 1 live microphone left to turn the lie into a public commitment. The ceremony began at 4 beneath the glass roof of Briar Park. By then, nearly 90,000 people had registered for the live stream. I was home. I had kept my promise to stay away. At 4:42, while Lydia and Julian were still posing for photographs, Priya received the final forensic report. The signature on the sponsorship agreement was not Julian's. It had been copied from an older PDF, inserted into a new file, and exported from Lydia's tablet. The Prescott Family Foundation had never approved the $2 million commitment. At 5:05, Priya pulled Julian into a private room and showed him everything. He ordered the donation announcement removed, the company logo taken down, and the cash advance frozen. Then Priya confronted Lydia. She called the forged signature a formatting issue. She said Julian had agreed in spirit. She insisted the paperwork could be corrected after the wedding. Priya told her clearly no announcement, no sponsor message, no use of the foundation's name. The reception began at 6:30. Bright Arc removed several logos, but the live stream continued because the ceremony had already been broadcast and Vow and Velvet had not yet issued a full shutdown order. Lydia saw that as an opening. At 7:12, she walked onto the stage and took the microphone from the host. Julian and I are proud to announce a $2 million commitment from the Prescott Family Foundation. The room applauded. Julian stood so quickly his chair struck the floor. He crossed the ballroom, took the microphone, and said, "There is no approved donation." The applause died. Lydia tried to laugh. She called it a surprise. Julian held up the contract. "Why is my signature on something I never saw?" She leaned toward him. "Do not humiliate me. You used my name, my company, and my family's foundation. We can fix the paperwork later, after today." "Your name is my name," she said. Julian stared at her. "Marriage does not make forgery retroactive." Lydia reached for the microphone and told the band to continue. Then Julian struck her. The sound went through the speakers. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then security rushed the stage. One guard pulled Julian back while 2 staff members reached Lydia. The live stream cut seconds later, but the footage was already saved, recorded, and being copied by hundreds of phones. Police were called. A medic examined Lydia in a private room. Julian was escorted away from the ballroom while guests stood frozen beside untouched champagne. Nothing Lydia forged gave him the right to hit her. Her lie explained the confrontation. It did not excuse his hand. At 8:03, Mateo texted me, "Turn on the news." I had just poured a glass of Pinot Noir. One station showed the slap. Another replayed Julian shouting about the signature. A third froze the frame on Priya standing below the stage with a file pressed against her chest. Every few minutes, another channel picked it up. I recognized that file immediately. Priya had emailed me at 5:11. Authorization invalid. Funds frozen. Donation not approved. Announcement canceled. I had not known Julian would become violent. but I knew exactly which lie Lydia had carried onto that stage. I finished my wine in silence. The cameras she hired to prove she belonged in high society had recorded the moment the entire performance collapsed. By midnight, Julian had been taken for questioning. Lydia had been examined by a medic, and Prescott Meridian's board had placed him on immediate leave. The wedding ended before dessert. The consequences split in two directions. Julian faced the consequences of striking her. Lydia faced the consequences of the contracts she had forged. The cash advance was frozen. Vow and Velvet suspended the campaign. Sponsors began canceling. Priya requested every email, file version, and bank record connected to the initiative. Then Mom called me. She was crying, but not because she wanted to know whether I was all right. "You have people in broadcasting," she said. "Call them. Get the footage taken down. I do not control the news. Then tell them the signature was a technical mistake. It was not. Hallie, your sister was assaulted. She needs medical care and an attorney. She does not need me to falsify a production record." Mom went silent. Then she said I had abandoned Lydia when she needed me most. I warned her in writing. She banned me. Dad called an hour later and asked whether Frameline could issue a statement saying we had once approved the live stream. "We never approved it." He said one sentence could protect the family. One false sentence could expose 48 employees and my company's insurance. That was the first boundary they finally understood. I gave Priya the original files when formally requested. I confirmed when Frameline received them, why we withdrew, and what we had returned. I did not post the clip. I did not speak to reporters beyond a written statement that my company had not produced the event. I sent Lydia the name of an independent attorney, a victim support contact, and an offer to stay in my guest room if she needed somewhere safe. But I did not repay vendors, replace the frozen money, alter metadata, or sign anything retroactively. I would help my sister get safe. I would not help her make the documents false again, for the first time in my life. My family had to face a crisis without turning my competence into their escape route. And months later, Lydia finally admitted why she had needed me out of that ballroom. 4 months later, Lydia asked to meet at a cafe. "I called you low class because I needed everyone to think your warning came from jealousy," she said. "If you were there, you would have reached Julian before the announcement. You didn't ban me because I looked like staff," I said. "You banned me because I could read what you had signed." She apologized. I did not say everything was forgiven. Trust would require more than one honest conversation. Months later, Mom contacted Frameline about a museum gala. This time, she asked for a proposal, a contract, and the deposit. That mattered. My sister hired cameras to prove she had entered high society. Instead, they showed the world how little class anyone on that stage possessed. Would you have warned the groom? Comment below and subscribe for clean revenge stories.